All right, everyone, welcome back to Getting In a College Coach Conversation. We just had a nice conversation with Nicole Doyle about juniors and what juniors are focused on right now as they think about the college process. And I acknowledged in the intro that we've been spending all of our time thinking about seniors, that we've almost forgotten that these other students exist, but they do, and they're out there and they've got some questions about college. And so today, for our second segment, we've brought in Kara Courtois, and we're going to talk a little bit about freshmen and sophomores. So those ninth and 10th graders who are still in the first half of their high school career. Kara, welcome back
Thank
again to
you.
the show. It's great to have you. Where do you start with ninth and 10th graders? I think that sometimes there's a sense from parents or from students that there's got to be something that I need to be doing right now in
Mm,
order to put myself in a good position. And from us, it's not just wait a second, I'll talk to you later. But it
mhm,
also is there's a measured tone of you don't have to be doing, lifting the earth at this point. How do we find good guidance that can help a student feel like they're on the right track, but
mhm,
they're also not pressing at this early phase in their high school career?
mhm. Yeah. I think it's still the space that I love to talk about with that age group is really
We got the right
where,
guest. Good.
yeah, where's your curiosity?
Yeah.
And how can we just encourage that? And really, I've been thinking so much about this before you even asked me to be on this because I have kids in this, age group generally. And it is sometimes where I'm different than some parents in, overall, but overall, we as parents sort of decide, where our values and interests lie.
Mhm.
And with this age group, I think in general, it's just a great time to figure out, well, who is my kid? How is my kid showing up? And where are their strengths and how do I meet them there? And maybe identify, whether with the help of a teacher, a guidance counselor, or just as a family, where might we try to dig into that a little bit? So in other words, if it's not just relying on the academics, but within the academics, where are their strengths? Because sometimes you start to see, because their honors and advanced placement or IB, those options are coming up usually at this stage.
Yeah.
So, and every kid is not meant for that,
Right.
but where are the strengths so that maybe we should be, I think at least in many schools, you do need to be a little bit aware of what are options coming down and might where we nudge in there um, for the academic side. And then for the activity side, it's where are their interests that maybe haven't been options even before. Maybe some clubs haven't been an opportunity because of COVID, or maybe they're not making the sports teams,
Yeah.
for some students as things get a little bit more challenging for tryouts and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, well, this no longer exists. I don't know what my identity is. How do we help you foster, where your anchor points will be? So a base suggestion I often encourage is identifying 2 activities and for some students, it's like each season because their schedule
Yeah.
might change
Sure.
according
Sure.
to what's going on. And for some students, it's kind of for the year, it really, that depends, but making sure they have 2 engagements outside the classroom, like when it
Yeah.
comes to activities.
It's interesting because in the last segment, Nicole talked about academics, extracurricular activities, and then kind of the start of the college search.
Mm.
And you've only talked about academics and extracurriculars. And that college piece, I think, is not pressing. It's not something that we need freshmen and sophomores to go out and start thinking about where they're going to fit.
Hmm.
And I love that just in the natural course of things, the two of you named the same two components, but then
Hmm.
she added something that I think is pressing for 11th graders. I want to go to your statement about strengths and just see if we can get some examples there,
Mm.
because sometimes it feels binary. We'll talk to a family and they'll
Hmm.
say, he's interested in STEM, and that's the strength. Or she's not interested in STEM.
Hmm.
So that's not the strength. But I think
Hmm.
you're talking about something much more specific to the student that maybe is even not attached to an academic subject. So,
Hmm.
what are some examples of strengths that parents might find in their kids when they really sit down and think about them?
hmm I think sometimes it comes down to personality, too, that you see some kids, and I'll just go basic of they're just really kind and caring.
Yeah.
And so how do we lean into that strength? And, my immediate, maybe because I'm a former community service advisor, is to say there's so endless options.
Yeah.
And honestly, one of my favorite things to do with kids, especially when they're in that I haven't found my place yet, my identity is not defined as a soccer player, or maybe it is, but
Yeah.
that's only one season perhaps, and so what else can I play with that I think taking a core characteristic such as kindness and leaning into it could be, well, what is something you can do with that? And let's look first at community service, just because there's endless options, and it can really be a place of where you can define yourself even outside of the school
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes kids get into a box of, well, I go to Key Club, which is a community service club, but like, I don't know, they're all kind of just doing fundraisers, and that's not really exciting, to
Yeah.
me. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I would have actually said the same thing. Like,
Same. Yeah.
not really my thing. I'm out. But where, but then when I pull up volunteermatch.org, for instance, has a really cool, totally free profile that I think is a great brainstorming tool. And I always encourage parents, let's pull it up and look through, well, what are the causes that speak to either your interests? And I love doing that, because sometimes a student will be like, oh, immigrant refugee, and I would not have been able to
Yeah.
get to that level had it
Yeah.
not like come up, or homelessness and hunger, and they zone in on that. I'm like, we would not have gotten there either. Tell me more about why,
Yeah.
and start. And a lot of times it does come back to like, well, my family's always volunteered at X, or in my religious community, we always sponsor, a refugee family.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, tell me more about that. So it's sometimes just pulling away the layers of what already exists there
Yeah.
and helping a student to see, well, you can actually make this your own now. Like maybe this has been a family thing, but we can lean into that. And what I love about doing that with community service, as an example, is it's malleable. So a kid who maybe does do athletics is still able to pursue something. But for a kid who doesn't, it might be a space where they can really kind of foster, an anchor point and not be so limited by just what's in the school.
That's
That's
right.
what I think really gets, I think, wheels spinning for families, where they might feel like, well, he's not really like rising to the top at his school.
Right.
All right, let's look
Yeah.
outside the school then. you know,
And rising to the top in that context has a very inside the box kind of assessment, right? It's,
yes.
are you the starter on the team, or are you in the top X% of the class, or
Yeah,
are you taking the most challenging classes? And so it doesn't often make space for the kinds of strengths that you're speaking to.
totally.
I love the way you're connecting the dots, right? And I think that there's really great advice there, which is that sometimes you can be in too much of a hurry to get the answer,
Oh,
right? So I need an
100%.
extracurricular activity. And so what's it going to be? As opposed to, you're caring and kind.
hmm
You might be interested in service. Let's look at the things that you care about. Let's find the causes that draw you in. And then let's look for opportunities to express that. That's going to take time, right? You're not going to
Yeah.
sit down and just in 5 minutes have the answer to that question. And so I
hmm
think that that patience is really key. Um, there's also an opportunity here, something that I always ask students actually when we're working on the college essay process,
hmm
because you're talking about a level of self knowledge and reflection that I think is really helpful when students have to start talking about who they are later on down the road. And if
hmm
they practice it early, it's helpful. But I'll have them sometimes think about, let's say you are on the soccer team, how do you engage with your athletics differently from your teammates? How is your approach different? Are
hmm
you a harder worker? Are you more of a team spirit kind of
hmm
person? Are you somebody that recognizes when others are low? We can
hmm
find strength just in terms of
Yeah,
how you engage with others in the context where you feel the most comfortable.
totally.
And then that might allow us to unlock something really cool for you as well.
Completely. Yeah. And with that, I wanted to say sometimes it's also don't wait for the big idea, just do something. And that's
Yeah.
where I come back to
Yeah.
like the two, like, do have a rule of, or a goal, we'll call it, of I will be engaged in 2 activities per season or per year,
Yeah.
overall, so that you're doing something so we have more information.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, and I definitely have met many students over years, they're like, oh, well, I went to that meeting, and they hop around. Totally fine, especially in 9th grade, to kind of shop things. But at the same time, I sometimes with 10th graders, I was going to say a good thing, a good visual tool is, let's just look, have you ever, I ask regularly, have you ever seen a college application? Because
Mhm.
most, why would they have,
Right.
unless they have an older? And I'm such a visual learner that I say, let's just take a peek so you can see, and we're working backwards. It's like a reverse engineering. If you had to fill this in today, what would you put on that extracurricular page? And not to
Well,
be threatening, but just a visual tool,
right.
you
Like
know?
what could you put because of what you've already done, and what would you
Yeah,
actually like to include here? Like what
exactly.
are the things
That's
that you're
part two.
hopeful are in this space?
Exactly.
Right. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to jump to the end, but I was like, I think that's such a great
it
exercise.
is so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, what do I hope? What do I kind of imagine that I'm
Yes.
going to look like as a candidate, or like we're not a
Yes.
finished product by any means when we get to senior year of high school.
Yep.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
But what do I hope that it's going to evolve into, and
Hmm.
how am I living up to my hopes for myself, and what are some ways that I can kind of complement things that I
Yes.
might be missing?
Yeah.
I love that as a potential visualization. I also think like what you're talking about trying new stuff, that's always something I come back to for freshmen
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
encourage them. I think a lot of students are afraid that if they start something and they quit, that that's going
Yes.
to look bad,
Yes.
that they can't
And the
drop
focus is
things.
on the quitting.
That's right. What's
Yep.
your kind of response to students who maybe are trying a lot of stuff but aren't yet finding something that's really grabbing them and might feel discouraged
Hmm.
about that?
Yeah. I ask more questions, and try to not feel, I think it's where students fall into comparison. My
Yeah,
friend is, always doing this, and I haven't, I don't think they articulate it as I haven't found that space yet, but I think that is the truth oftentimes. And so I just always come back to kind of like, where do you feel a sense of belonging is, something that I think is really what the colleges are actually using those activities for. Where have you, created community, or where have you established like your place in
yeah,
your school?
yeah.
Um, and when they're not looking at the transcript, that's kind of because they're trying to speculate, or we were when we were at admissions, were you going to be on our campus potentially?
That's right.
And we're not expecting you're a light switch that it just happens to be you're in college, I'm going to get engaged. Let's see a little bit of exercising of that. And so um, I think that sometimes frees students up to start envisioning other possibilities, and hopefully leaning into some of those curiosities that they didn't even realize they were allowed to when they painted themselves into certain boxes, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that predictive value of like, what are we learning about you through your activities, and what does that mean for when you get to college is really
Yeah.
powerful. And it's never a one-to-one, like, you're in the key club, we're excited to have you in our key club. Like that's
Yes.
not what it's
Yes.
about. It's more
Yes. Good
about
point.
demonstration of care and commitment
Yep.
to a community, and how that might be experienced on the college campus.
Yep.
Um, I often tell students, there's not a whole lot that you will do in your freshman or sophomore year that will be the thing on your college application.
Yep.
There are also some things that you can do as a freshman or sophomore that will never explicitly be talked about in your college application, but still have some positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of your broad guidance for students, what are some things that they can do ninth and 10th grade that will help them to be better citizens of the world, better ready to engage with college expectations,
Mm-hmm.
more prepared to be able to put together a strong application, just anything like that that we can leave our underclassmen with here.
Yeah. I mean, I think just in and of itself, how can I add to my community? Be it the school, be it to, your surrounding town, anything that's an issue of importance to you. It doesn't have to be just through volunteer work, but or again, a strength. Like I often think a lot of people are really good at working with little kids, but they may overlook that,
Yeah.
as a core value, and it shows up beautifully. on applications, whether it's sometimes even helping within your own family, because family responsibilities goes on an
That's right.
application.
That's
And I
right.
think that never comes up. Like people are always surprised when they see that on an application. And I'm not really sure what my 10-year-old would do without his older brother being a huge influence, in his life. So, yeah. Final thing I wanted to say is, starting to think about like how you want to grow utilizing in the summertime, because that can be really exciting. I think
Yeah.
sometimes parents, it sneaks up on them of like, wow, actually the summer could be a space for growth. And one thing I was thinking about is work experience. I think a lot of seniors go to put in, and I was like, oh, well, did you have a job? Did you forget to put that on there? And they're like, no, I never worked. I'm like, actually, that was an easy one,
Yeah.
overall,
Yeah.
that especially ninth, 10th graders, they don't, parents sometimes I've found don't realize they're old enough to work,
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah.
And that can be invaluable and an easy thing to really kind of leverage while they're trying to figure out maybe other areas of interest.
Yeah. Start to cultivate um,
Yeah.
that work experience. I think that's great. I would
Yeah.
put in one other little plug as we sign off here for reading. Just read. Read
Yes.
as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Read anything that you like. It doesn't matter what you're reading, but I continue to see such a powerful correlation between my readers and my reflective
100%.
writers in the college process. So
That could
get
be
your
a
kids
whole
reading.
other episode.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We could do a whole show on reading.
Great.
Thanks, Kara. Really a
Thanks, Ian.
pleasure. Appreciate
Good to
having you.
see you.
Good to see you too. When we come back, we are going to talk about what underclassmen can think about with respect to paying for college. So don't go away. We'll talk to our finance experts in a moment.